so that immediate needs of victims can be addressed. I would hope, but that's not always the case. But what they're doing is they're setting up. Actually, they say 3 ethical standards, but then that's why I put 3. But they actually have 4. That's funky. Weird. Maybe that's why this is chapter 11. They got tired. So, that's where it said that. So the 4 are, the first one is, at least, the first sort of core ethical standard is responsibility and accountability. Taking responsibility is good. Not taking responsibility is bad. You can't just blame the individual. The organization has to take the blame. So it talks about that. It talks about the Valdez and all that type of stuff. And then what it moves to then, and by the way, this lecture is going to be pretty short, I think, because this is sort of a short chapter. So, this is where this all goes. Opportunity, golden opportunity number 1. Yeah. You'll be able to see it when you actually see your look at the PowerPoint. So, big golden opportunity number 1. Organizations are better able to generate productive crisis response if they are willing to accept responsibility for any actions that may have caused the crisis. Don't just blame it on the dude, that guy. It's the organization. That's why the thing from FedEx was good. He didn't just say, bad guy who threw stuff over a fence. It became a larger organizational response. So you got to take responsibility. That's very, very important. Snyder took responsibility. He also blamed a lot of folks. Scapegoat. I don't know. A lot of folks think that he gave a fitting response. He probably saved his job. But there was also a lot of blame to go around him with the Flint stuff. So, big golden opportunity number 1. Organizations are better able to generate productive crisis response if they are willing to accept responsibility for actions that may have caused the crisis. So, accept responsibility. You can't say, it's not my fault, it's not my fault. Whatever. Accept the responsibility. The next sort of area, ethical standard that they say for the context of crisis, organizational crisis, is access to information. They talk about how, generally speaking, in communication, free speech and free flow of information is important, which is so important to me. I hate it when organizations try to hide information. Whatever organization might be, a college, a government, whatever. It's horrible. And they talk about this notion of significant choice. They say this obligation is sometimes referred to as significant choice because it gives people information they need to make significant choices. Ooh, that's smart. Organizations dealing with toxic chemicals, for example, have a moral obligation to inform members of the surrounding community of the potential risks so community members can make informed choices about how to respond. Yeah. Give the information. Now, sometimes they do say, sometimes organizations say it's too expensive, we can't do the research, we can't get this information out because they're all about profit. Profit over humanity. That's bad. That's unethical. But sometimes withholding information, they say, can be cool. Issues of privacy and things like that. So it does say organizations sometimes withhold information or temporarily postpone its release for a variety of ethically justified reasons. In the case of an airline disaster, for example, families of victims are usually notified before passenger lists are released to the press. Some basic stuff like that. That makes sense. But withholding information or remaining strategically ambiguous or stonewalling is generally bad. It is unethical. Therefore, twirl around. Golden opportunity number 2. Organizations that are open and honest before and during a crisis are better prepared to manage and recover from the events. Organizations that are open and honest before and during a crisis are better prepared to manage and recover from the events. Which says that if you're an organization, you need to start being honest in the first place. If you haven't, if you're an organization or your company or whatever, it's not your practice to give out information when appropriate, do bad, and you won't be prepared for a crisis. People won't like you. Kenny. Okay, the next sort of ethical standard. Humanism and care. So humanism, what is it? Emphasizes the uniqueness and inherent worth of human beings. And the ethic of care concerns the duty all humans have to others, and specifically requires a supportive response to individuals who have suffered some harm or who have some need. I would say, it talks about the Good Samaritan. I would say, it's not just humans, but it's other living creatures. And the environment, maybe? I don't know. So basically what they say, it all boils down to folks need to respond in caring ways, and thus a response that harms others is bad. You need to try to help people as quickly as possible. It talks about, on the page of top 221, crisis often creates an opportunity for organizations, other groups, and agencies to respond in humane and caring ways, to nurture others, and to ethically respond to human suffering. In fact, there is a natural tendency to want to help following a crisis. Seeing media accounts of victims can prompt people to help out following a crisis. You see all the stuff, even with the Flint. People are giving water or sending stuff, donating money, etc., etc., etc. Therefore, golden opportunity number 3. Organizations, I wish you could see this. Organizations that make humanism and care priorities before crises are better prepared for enacting these values after they have occurred. So what this basically says, organizations already need to have a value system, have an ethical standards of humanism and caring, not just merely profit. That's important. Care about humans and birds and trees and the sky. Next one, which I rate as number 4, but I don't know. Role of values in a crisis response. Maybe this is a bigger one. That's why they say 3, and this is not necessarily an ethical standard. I don't know. This is sort of the last part of the chapter. Crisis can create a condition or opportunity to clarify values and demonstrate ethical values. So this is when they're moving into the opportunity stuff. You can, in a crisis, sort of self-reflect. You know, what's our organization all about? What are our values? Do we need to change them? And this is, I put a big star by that, because this stuff I think is really important. Managers are often confused and even shocked and simply cannot determine what actions to take after a crisis. In these cases, it is very important to take time and think about the ethical implications. This includes thinking carefully about whom the stakeholders potentially impacted by the crisis are, what their values are, how they might be impacted, and what duties and obligations the organization has to these stakeholders. So talking about all these people, each of these groups will have its own values, and these values are likely to compete with others. So you got to look at your core values. Always think about all the ethical applications. Always, if you're uncertain how to act, which is almost always the case in crises, look to your core values in your organization, or even a mission statement. They gave Johnson & Johnson as an example, which basically means if you're an organization, you don't already have a mission statement or these core ethical values, you need to have them pre-crisis. So part of handling a crisis is to handle the crisis before the crisis happens, even though definitionally, you can't see a crisis coming. Mike. Also talks about how a value-based response can help an organization renew itself, because that's part of it. If you have a huge crisis situation, you completely renew your organization. It talks about the example of Howard Lutnick and the whatever company that is, CF company. What is CF employees? Cantor Fitzgerald. And what they did post 9/11. CF did survive, and now the company has a renewed set of values and sense of purpose based on the losses of the 9/11 attacks, so that you can renew yourself through crisis. Part of their discourse of renewal. It also talks about this idea of virtue ethics. Goes back to Aristotle, but basically this is a traditional approach to ethics that could be traced by virtue ethics suggests that people tend to act in predictable ways and follow their established patterns of conduct. Thus, a manager who has developed a habit of being honest in the past tends to be honest in the future. Which also means, and you create a positive reputation. They say reservoir of goodwill, also known as ethos. But that's the thing. I mean, if you're not honest in the first place, and then you quickly try to be honest post crisis, I don't know if people are going to buy it. But people tend to follow established patterns and norms. So you got to start responsible, value-based norms and patterns before a crisis actually happens. So I don't know how else to do. Golden opportunity. Number 4. Organizations have a larger reservoir of goodwill and are better prepared to avoid or manage crises if they have identified, discussed, instituted, and followed core values. And hopefully those core values are ethical. Okay. Then that's it. That's pretty much it. I should end with solid gold. I'm going to go put solid gold in this. And then review. Oh, I don't want to do that. I'm going to go to YouTube. Solid gold dancers.
And the solid gold dancer, Darcel.
So, the 4 golden opportunities to review include organizations are better able to generate productive crisis responses if they are willing to accept responsibility for any actions that may have caused the crisis. Responsibility. Number 2, opportunity number 2, golden opportunity number 2. Organizations that are open and honest before and during crises are better prepared to manage and recover from the events. Open and honest before and during. Number 3. Wow, look at that breakdancing. Number 3, golden opportunity number 3. Organizations that make humanism and care priorities before crises are better prepared for enacting these values after they have occurred. Humanism, care priorities. You need to have a burning heart. That's humanism and care priorities. Have a burning heart. And then finally, golden opportunity number 4. Organizations have a larger reservoir of goodwill and are better prepared to avoid or manage crises if they have identified, discussed, instituted, and followed core values. I miss you, and I will see you on Tuesday.